The whispers were the worst part. Came alone. The divorce is that bad, huh? I heard he's taking her for everything and she's broke as hell. I kept my spine straight, just like my best friend Tasha told me to. I stared at the centerpiece wilting hydrangeas and focused on the smell of industrial dish soap wafting from the kitchen doors behind me. I was at table 24, the pity table, the overflow table, shoved so far into the back corner of the Larchmont's grand ballroom that I was practically sharing a seat with the busboys. My name is Ava Collins. I'm 30 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse, which means I'm an expert at pretending everything is fine while chaos erupts around me. I'm also a single mother, which means my tolerance for polite society's judgment is worn down to the bone. My daughter, Emma, was safe. That was the only thing keeping me upright. She was 6 years old, probably covered in glitter and glue at that very moment. Safe at home with Tasha. Just go for 1 hour, Ava. Tasha had insisted, shoving me into this 2-year-old dress I'd bought on clearance. Show your face. Don't let Mark Benson turn you into a ghost. The problem was, I felt like a ghost. Outside the massive windows overlooking Manhattan, an early June thunderstorm was rolling in. The sky was a bruised purple, and the humidity in the ballroom was thick, making the silk blend of my dress cling to my back. A flicker of the lights, a distant rumble of thunder. And then, I heard his voice. My lawyer says I have clear grounds. Father's rights are father's rights. My blood went cold. I didn't have to look. I knew that voice, thick with cheap whiskey and manufactured indignation. Mark Benson, my soon-to-be ex-husband. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was my cousin's wedding. But Mark loved an audience, and he especially loved an audience that thought I had wronged him. He was at the main bar, talking too loudly to a groomsman he didn't even know. She thinks she can just keep my kid from me. My lawyer is going to drag her through. The air left my lungs. The room started to tilt. I'm a nurse. I know the signs of a vasovagal response, the roaring in my ears, the pinprick narrowing of my vision. The whispers at my table had stopped. Everyone was listening to Mark. The pity had curdled into spectacle. I had to leave. I had to get out before he saw me, before he pointed, before he brought the entire messy, humiliating collapse of our lives crashing down onto my cousin's reception. I fumbled for my small clutch, my hands shaking. Just stand up, Ava. Walk through the kitchen doors. Don't run. I started to slide my chair back, the legs scraping against the marble. A hand landed on the small of my back. It wasn't a tentative touch. It was heavy, warm, and impossibly steady. The heat of it shot through the thin fabric of my dress, rooting me to the spot. A man's voice, low and close to my ear, cut through the noise. It was gravel and shadow. Just pretend to be my wife and dance with me right now. I froze. My head snapped around. I was looking up, way up. He was tall, dressed in a midnight blue suit so exquisitely tailored it probably cost more than my car. He wasn't looking at me. His dark eyes were scanning the room over my head, sharp and assessing. He was handsome in a way that scared me all sharp angles, a strong jaw, and an air of absolute control. I recognized him from the ceremony. He was a guest of the groom's family, the Rinaldis. They owned a massive restaurant and logistics empire. Dominic Rinaldi, that was his name. He must have felt me tense, ready to bolt. His hand tightened slightly, not painfully, but with undeniable authority. And as he shifted, his cufflink caught the light, just below the bone of his wrist, peeking out from the starched white cuff. I saw it. Dark ink. It wasn't a tattoo. It was a symbol, precise and stark. My breath hitched. I knew that symbol. A memory flooded me, cold and clinical, a year ago. A 10-year-old boy in the pediatric ICU, a victim of a street clash gone wrong. When we were assessing him, I saw that exact symbol drawn in permanent marker on his ribs. He'd been terrified, grabbing my wrist, whispering, "Don't wipe it off. It's my brother's. It keeps me safe." My God, who was this man? His gaze finally dropped to mine. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but they held no malice, only a strange, urgent calculation. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod toward the bar. Mark Benson, right. I flinched. How did he know Mark's name? I saw the hotel security detail, he murmured, his hand still on my back, already guiding me to my feet as if I'd agreed. They were whispering about a disruptor looking for his ex-wife. He's about 10 seconds from making a scene that will end up on the internet. He was right. I could see Mark pushing away from the bar, his face flushed and determined, scanning the tables. Please, Dominic Rinaldi said. It wasn't a plea. It was an instruction. He pulled me to my feet. The band, thank God, had just started a slow song, Sinatra. He didn't yank me. He placed me. His right hand remained on my back. His left took mine. It was a formal, practiced hold, a world away from Mark's sloppy, possessive grabs. We were on the dance floor in 3 steps. The whispers at table 24 died. The entire room seemed to pause. Over Dominic's shoulder, I saw Mark. He had spotted me. His mouth fell open, the rage on his face dissolved into pure, slack-jawed confusion. He was looking at me, and then at the man holding me. "My name is Dominic," the stranger said, his voice a low rumble I felt in my chest. "Ava," it came out as a squeak. He began to lead. He moved with an effortless, liquid grace. I was clumsy, my feet fighting the cheap heels I wasn't used to. I was used to scrubs and sneakers, to the smell of antiseptic, not the faint, clean scent of expensive cologne and starch. He pulled me a fraction of an inch closer. It wasn't romantic. It was a strategic maneuver, blocking the room's view of my terrified expression. "Listen to me very carefully, Ava," he said, his eyes finally locking on mine. They were the color of strong coffee. "This is a transaction. I need you to distract some people who are watching me. You need me to stop the guy who's about to ruin your night." "Watching you," I whispered, trying to follow his steps. "Who?" "Don't look," he commanded, his grip tightening just enough to stop me from turning my head. "Table 7, by the window. 2 men in gray suits. They've been tracking my movements since the cocktail hour. They need to believe I'm occupied, that I'm domestic. Domestic me, the broke-as-hell single mom from the pity table. He was using me. I was a prop, a human shield. I should have been furious. I should have been terrified. I was terrified, but not of him. As I watched Mark stand frozen by the bar, looking utterly defeated, all I felt was a bizarre, icy wave of relief. This man, this stranger, was a shield for me, too. "Okay," I whispered. My voice was stronger this time. Dominic Rinaldi nodded once, a quick, decisive motion. He steered me in a slow, elegant circle. He was all control, and for the first time in 2 years. I wasn't the one holding everything together. I just let him. Just then, the storm broke. It wasn't a gentle rain. It was a deluge. A crack of thunder exploded directly overhead, so violent it rattled the champagne flutes on the tables. The main chandeliers above us flickered, buzzed, and died. The ballroom plunged into darkness. The only light came from the red emergency exit signs and the weak, battery-powered LEDs in the floral centerpieces. The music cut out. A few people screamed. It lasted maybe half a second, a full second. In that sudden, terrifying intimacy of the dark, with this stranger's arms around me, I saw it. A flash. It wasn't lightning. It was the distinct bluish-white flash of a phone's camera. Over Dominic's shoulder, near table 7, a man in a cheap vest was holding up his phone. He had just taken our picture, in the dark. Dominic saw him, too. His entire body went rigid. He didn't stop. He didn't let go. In one fluid motion, he pulled me flush against his chest, dipping me slightly as if it were part of the dance, shielding my face with his shoulder just as the man took a second picture. Then, as quickly as it went out, the auxiliary power kicked in. The chandeliers hummed back to life, flickering yellow before settling into a steady, bright white. The music stuttered, then swelled again. And the entire room was looking directly at us. They hadn't seen the man with the camera. They hadn't seen the threat. They had seen a handsome, mysterious man pull a woman tight in the middle of a blackout. One of the bridesmaids, her face flushed with champagne, started to clap. Then the groomsmen started to hoot. Laughter rippled through the ballroom. Whistles. "Get a room, Rinaldi!" a man shouted from the groom's side, and the table erupted. My face was on fire. This was 1,000 times worse than Mark's scene. This was a spotlight. This was humiliation on a scale I couldn't even process. I looked back at the bar. Mark was gone. The security guards were still there, but they were relaxed now, grinning at us on the dance floor. The immediate threat had vanished, replaced by this new, horrifying one. I stumbled over my own feet, pushing against Dominic's chest. "I can't," I hissed, panic rising in my throat. "They think everyone is looking." Dominic's hand was still a vice on my back. He didn't let me go. He held me steady. He smiled. It was a mask, a brilliant, charming, utterly fake smile, aimed at the cheering crowd. He looked down at me, and to anyone watching, it looked like adoration. His eyes, however, were cold, sharp, and scanning the room again. The man with the camera was gone. "Just let them think it," Dominic Rinaldi murmured, his voice a smooth, dangerous promise against my hair. "The show's not over." The song ended. Sinatra faded into polite, scattered applause that blended with the genuine, rowdy cheers for us. My face was a furnace. The show's not over. Dominic had said he was right. He didn't release me immediately. He kept his hand on my back, a solid point of heat, and smoothly guided me away from the center of the floor. He moved with the predatory grace of a man who had never once in his life been relegated to table 24. As we walked, I felt the eyes. Every table we passed, the conversation stopped. The whispers that had been mocking me 30 seconds ago were now something else, confused, envious, speculative. He was leading me back to my seat, back to the pity table by the kitchen doors. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. He was returning the prop to its storage corner. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice sounding strained and foreign. I didn't know if I was thanking him for the dance or for stopping Mark. "Stay seated," he murmured, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. He pulled my chair out. "A gentleman. Don't leave the ballroom, not yet." He nodded once, a gesture of finality, and turned. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of expensive suits, leaving me alone with the wilting hydrangeas and the smell of dish soap. I sat, my hands trembling in my lap. The entire ballroom was still buzzing. My cousin, the bride, gave me a frantic, questioning thumbs up from the head table. I just stared back. Who was he? I mean, I knew who he was. Everyone in New York knew the name Rinaldi. Rinaldi's wasn't just a string of high-end Italian restaurants. It was an empire. It was pasta, olive oil, and logistics. It was the fleet of temperature-controlled trucks that supplied half the city's fine dining. It was old world, old money, and, according to rumor, old rules. The whispers about the Rinaldi family had always been there, a gray past they were desperately trying to go white on. Dominic was the face of that change, the businessman, the conciliator, the one who spoke about supply chains and sustainable sourcing, not other things. He had a rule, Tasha had told me once when we'd splurged on appetizers at one of his downtown locations. "My chef friend says the #1 rule at Rinaldi's is no civilians," she'd said. "They don't mix business with the normal world, keeps everyone safe." And he had just broken that rule, spectacularly, in front of 300 people. My phone buzzed in my clutch, a text from Tasha. "Just saw a pic on Instagram from someone at the wedding. Who is that? Are you okay?" My blood ran cold again, colder than when I'd heard Mark's voice. A picture. The flash I'd seen in the dark. It was already out. I stared at the screen, my internal chaos roaring louder than the thunder outside. This wasn't a rescue. This was a different kind of disaster. This is summer, 2025. New York is a city on edge. We all survived the pandemic, but we came out bruised. The cost of living has skyrocketed. My rent in Queens just went up another 15%. I'm a pediatric nurse at St. Jude's, and our unit is short-staffed by at least 20% on a good day. I'm pulling doubles, drowning in paperwork and the acidic smell of sanitizer, just to keep my head above water. I am 30 years old, I am smart, I am kind, and I am, by every measurable standard, failing. My central conflict isn't about finding love at a wedding. My conflict is about keeping my 6-year-old daughter, Emma. It's about the mountain of medical debt my mother left me when she passed last year, and the ongoing bills for my father's dialysis treatments. It's about finding my self-respect in the wreckage Mark Benson left behind. Mark, he's not just an ex. He's a hole in my boat. He works in shady real estate, which means he flips properties with questionable loans and always seems to be one step ahead of foreclosure. He's drowning in debt, and he sees Emma as his only leverage. He's using father's rights as a weapon to try and squeeze money out of me. Money I don't have. And I just handed him a nuclear weapon. I could already hear him in family court. Your Honor, she's bringing dangerous men around my daughter, men with reputations. Tasha Green is my only anchor. She's a kindergarten teacher, practical and sharp, and she sees the world without any Instagram filters. Don't let any man define you. Ava is her mantra. She'd been repeating it to me for 2 years, ever since I kicked Mark out, and in the span of 10 minutes, I had been defined by 2 different men, the pathetic, loudmouthed drunk, and the silent, terrifyingly controlled mafia boss. I looked up from my phone. Scanning the room, I saw Dominic. He was no longer the charming dance partner. He was standing near the groom's family, deep in conversation with another man. This man was different. He wasn't old world like Dominic. He was sleek, wearing a suit that looked more Silicon Valley than Little Italy. He was smiling, but his eyes were flat. I recognized him from the business pages, Elliot Cade. Cade was the new king of New York. His empire was built on data and delivery, fintech apps that processed restaurant payments, and a fleet of gig worker delivery bikes that were putting traditional logistics out of business. He was all disruption and optimization. He was also, according to the whispers in the restaurant industry, ruthless. He wanted to monopolize the entire food and beverage supply chain in the city. And the biggest thing standing in his way, the Rinaldi's old-school trucking routes and cold storage warehouses. I was watching the 2 biggest players in the city's food war smile at each other, and I'd just been used as a pawn by one of them. The camera flash in the dark hadn't been a wedding guest. It had been surveillance. Cade's world was the one that scared me more. It was a world of deep fakes, doxing, and online harassment, a world where an anonymous tip to Child Protective Services or a doctored photo could destroy a person, a world where the family court system, already so harsh and unforgiving, could be easily manipulated. My shame, the simple, quiet shame of arriving alone, of being the poor relation at the pity table, was gone. In its place was a sharp, professional dread. I still believed in love. I had to. I saw it every day in the way parents held their sick children, but I was terrified of Emma getting hurt. I'd built a firewall around her life, and I'd just let a man I didn't know, a man with that symbol on his wrist, walk right through it. I thought again of that symbol, the ink. The boy in my unit, Liam. He'd been caught in the crossfire of some territorial dispute. He'd told me his older brother drew that symbol on him. It means keep them safe, he'd whispered, delirious with pain. It's my brother's promise. Liam didn't make it. I looked at Dominic Rinaldi, who was now shaking Elliot Cade's hand, both of them smiling like sharks. Dominic's famous no civilians rule wasn't just a business policy, it was a memorial. He knew exactly what happened when these 2 worlds collided. He knew what happened to the Liams of the world. And he had just painted a target on my back. I had to get out of there. But his words echoed in my head. Don't leave the ballroom. Not yet. He was protecting me from Mark, but who was going to protect me from him? My desire wasn't for a man like Dominic. It was for peace, for the right to raise my daughter without fear. But looking at the political maneuvering in that ballroom and thinking of the digital photograph of us now floating in the ether, I knew peace was the one thing I wasn't going to get. The applause for the dip, the whistles, the shouts of, "Get a room," they all died down. But the low, invasive hum of 300 people whispering stayed. Dominic Rinaldi didn't let go. He kept that heavy, warm hand on my back, a solid point of pressure, and guided me off the dance floor. He was a shark in a sea of guppies, and he was towing me in his wake. We passed my cousin, the bride. Her mouth was a perfect O of champagne-fueled shock. I couldn't even look at her. He was leading me back to table 24, back to the pity table by the kitchen doors. He pulled my chair out, a gesture of impeccable manners that felt like a threat. "Stay seated," he murmured, his voice too low for the gossips at the next table to hear. "Don't leave the ballroom. Not yet." He nodded once, a gesture of finality, and turned. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of expensive suits, leaving me alone with the wilting hydrangeas and the smell of dish soap. My heart was a trapped bird against my ribs. What had just happened? A commotion near the bar snapped my head around. I braced for Mark's voice, but it wasn't him. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance. You need to leave." It was the hotel security, the ones Dominic had mentioned. They were flanking Mark, one on each arm. They weren't rough, but they were immovable. "You can't touch me," Mark sputtered, his face modeling. "I know people here. I have rights, my kid." "You're trespassing, sir," the taller guard said, his voice flat and bored. "You can leave under your own power, or we can assist you." They steered him, puffing and indignant, through a side exit by the coat check. It was efficient, clean, and had Dominic Rinaldi's influence written all over it. The immediate threat, the public humiliation I had dreaded, was gone. But the relief felt cold. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Tasha. It was a group chat for the pediatric nursing staff at St. Jude's. A link. Title, "Looks like our Ava Collins is moving up in the world." My stomach hollowed out. I clicked it. It was a video, not the picture from the dark, but a video someone at the wedding had taken on their phone. It started right after the blackout. It captured the dip, the way he'd pulled me flush against his chest, shielding me. It captured the moment the crowd started to cheer. It looked intimate. It looked real. "Oh my God," I whispered. My reputation at work. The upcoming custody hearing. This was a nightmare. They're efficient, aren't they? I gasped and nearly dropped my phone. Dominic was back. He hadn't returned to his own table. He had slid into the seat opposite me at mine, as if he belonged next to the busboy's station. "You saw that?" I asked, my voice a strained whisper. "I saw it," he said. His eyes weren't scanning the room anymore. They were fixed on me, intense and assessing. "You're a target now, Ava, and so am I." "A target for what?" I hissed. "This is a wedding." "This is business." He leaned forward, creating a small, insulated bubble of privacy between us. The noise of the reception seemed to fade. "One night, that's all I'm asking. We cover each other. You get through the night without your ex causing any more trouble. And I get a convincing distraction." Before I could process the word distraction, my phone buzzed again in my hand. Ping. A new number. An iMessage from a long, jumbled email address. I opened it. My blood turned to ice. It was the picture. The one from the blackout. Grainy, bathed in the bluish white of the camera flash, but unmistakable. It was me, held tight in his arms, his shoulder shielding my face as he dipped me. It looked secret, illicit, forbidden. My stomach dropped, the half glass of champagne rising in my throat. Ping! A second message from the same sender appeared right below the photo. "If he doesn't sign the logistics contract by Friday, we'll make sure the family court sees this. A single mother mingling with his kind. Must be hard to keep custody." I stopped breathing. This wasn't a vague threat from a society gossip page. This was a scalpel, aimed directly at the one thing in my life that mattered: family court, custody, Emma. "Ava, what is it?" Dominic's voice sharpened, cutting through my paralysis. I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking too violently. I slid the phone across the table, over the breadcrumbs and water rings. He picked it up. His eyes narrowed. He read the text. He looked at the photo. A single muscle in his jaw tightened. That was it, but it was enough. The charming, controlled mask hadn't cracked, but the man underneath had just felt the blow. "He doesn't sign," I whispered, finding my voice. "They mean you." "Elliot Cade," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis. "He's forcing your hand," I said, the pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. "He's trying to get you to sign over your logistics, your data routes. By using me," the injustice of it burned, hot and acidic, "by using my daughter." As if summoned by the thought, my phone rang. The screen lit up, Tasha. I snatched the phone back from Dominic, my thumb fumbling to accept the call. "Tasha, is Emma okay?" "Ava." Tasha's voice was high, tight with a panic I had never heard from her in 10 years of friendship. She was the one who calmed me down. "Ava, there's a man. He's been standing across the street for, 10 minutes, under the streetlight." A different kind of cold flooded my veins. "What did you call 911? "I did. They said they can't do anything unless he tries to enter. He's just standing. But Ava," her voice dropped, cracking, "he's not just standing there anymore. A minute ago, he walked up to our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who was taking out his trash. I had the window open. I heard him." "What did he say? Tasha, what did he say?" "He asked, 'Where does Dominic's wife live?' Aka." The ballroom, the music, the laughter, it all evaporated. There was only Tasha's terrified whisper and the roaring in my ears. "Dominic's wife." "He's at my house," and I said, the words dead in my mouth. "He's at my house now." In the background, I heard a thin, terrified wail that shattered my heart. It was Emma. She was crying. "Mommy, I want Mommy. Who's that man?" "Tasha." "Ava, Emma's scared," Tasha said, her voice breaking. "She heard me on the phone. What the hell is going on? Who is Dominic?" I looked up, my eyes wide with a terror that went beyond anything I'd ever known. I met Dominic Rinaldi's gaze. The calculated ice in his eyes was gone. It was replaced by something else, something hot, a controlled, precise fury I'd only seen in operating rooms when a child was coding. He didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He held out his hand for the phone. I gave it to him. "Tasha," he said, his voice pure, unfiltered command. It was the voice of a man who didn't just run an empire, but was one. "My name is Dominic Rinaldi. I am with Ava. I am sending a man to you right now. His name is Ben Carter." He looked at me. "Your address," I told him, my voice numb. He repeated it into the phone. "Ben Carter will be in a black Escalade. License plate number Victor Charlie 398. He will be there in 15 minutes. Pack an overnight bag for Ava's daughter. You will both go with him. Do not talk to anyone else. Do you understand me?" A pause. I could hear Tasha's heavy, ragged breathing. "Who are you?" "I'm the man who's going to fix this. 15 minutes. Be ready." He hung up. He didn't give her time to argue. His fingers were already dialing someone else. "Ben, situation at 1422 Ditmars Boulevard. Priority 1. Package is a woman and a 6-year-old girl. Pick up and transfer to the LIC safe house. Full security protocols." He listened for a second, his face grim. "Yes, the Cade contingency. Go, now." He snapped the phone shut and placed it on the table. The silence between us was louder than the band. "LIC safe house," I whispered. "A corporate apartment, leased under the restaurant's parent company. Fully legal, paper trail clean. No one will find them there tonight." This was it. This was the moment, the pivot point on which my entire life was about to turn. If I said yes, if I accepted this, I was involved. I was the single mother accepting help from a man the world called Mafia, the anonymous texter, Elliot Cade. They would be right. If I said no, if I ran out of this ballroom, grabbed a cab, and went home, that man was still outside my house. That man who was looking for Dominic's wife. Emma's cry echoed in my head. I want Mommy. There was no choice. There never was. My pride, my reputation, my terror of the court, my fear of him, none of it mattered. I choose Emma, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I choose her safety, always. Dominic nodded, a short, sharp motion. Good. You need to tell me exactly what's happening, I demanded, finding a sliver of the spine Tasha always told me I had. You said Cade. You said logistics. Explain. He leaned back, but his eyes never left mine. Elliot Cade wants my cold storage network. He wants my data. He wants to own every food delivery in this city, from the farm to the fork. I said no. So he sends someone to take my picture. He's creating leverage, a weakness, Dominic said, his voice hard. He thinks I'm still my father. He thinks I'll react badly, get my hands dirty over a family matter. He's trying to bait me. He gestured to my phone, and he's using you as the bait. It made a horrible, perfect, sickening sense. I stood up. My legs felt steadier now. The adrenaline was a cold fire. Okay, let's go. Go where? To the safe house. To my daughter. I'm not letting Tasha handle this alone. He stood with me. He was a wall of muscle and expensive tailoring, blocking me from the rest of the room. The whispers died as we both rose. Ava, he said, his voice low. I am not your wife, I said, my voice cutting and clear, aimed at him and him alone. I am not your girlfriend. I am a mother whose child is in danger because of you. He didn't flinch. I know. This arrangement, I said, trying to draw a line in the sand, it's one night, you get your child to safety, I get my enemies to back off. That's the deal. I looked at this man, this stranger who held my entire life in his hands, the man with the symbol for keep them safe on his wrist, who had failed to keep his own brother safe. Tonight, he said, his voice rough, tonight, to get them to pull back. We walk out of here together. The people watching me, the people who sent that text will follow us, and they will leave your daughter alone. He was right. The man at my house wasn't the primary threat. He was a scout. The real danger was the surveillance. Cade, we had to draw them away from Emma. I nodded once. A verbal agreement. A deal with a man I should never have met. He put his hand back on the small of my back. This time, it wasn't a suggestion, and it wasn't a feint for the crowd. It was a shield. Let's go, he said. And together, we walked out of the ballroom, leaving the whispers and the pity of Table 24 burning down behind us. We didn't take the main exit through the lobby, where the remaining wedding guests might see us. Dominic's hand, still a solid point of heat on my back, steered me toward the whooshing swing doors I had been sitting beside all night. The moment we pushed through, the sound of Sinatra and clinking glasses was swallowed by the sudden, sharp roar of industrial fans and the metallic clatter of plates. It was a different world back here, a brightly lit stainless steel maze. Waiters in white jackets rushed past us, their faces tense, not giving us a second glance. This was the service corridor. We take the service elevator to the garage, Dominic said, his voice low and clipped. He was back in his element. This was logistics, movement, control. Ben will meet us there after he has the packages. The packages? He meant my daughter and my best friend. The clinical, detached term sent a cold spike through my heart. But I pushed the feeling down. Detachment was safe. Detachment was necessary. We stopped in a small alcove by a loading dock, where the rain lashed against a pane of reinforced wire mesh glass. The air smelled like wet concrete and diesel fumes. Dominic stepped away to speak in a low, rapid voice to a hotel security chief who was standing guard by the elevators. I leaned against the cool tile wall. The adrenaline from the ballroom, the terror from Tasha's call, was beginning to fade, leaving a shaky, vibrating hollowness in my limbs. Think, Ava, think like a nurse. When a patient codes, you don't panic, you triage. You identify the threats in order of severity. Threat number 1, Emma's immediate physical safety. Dominic's man, Ben Carter, was handling that. I had to trust that. Threat number 2, the legal and professional fallout. Mark, the family court, the anonymous text, the photo, that, I realized, was mine to handle. I would not be a pawn. I would not be the hysterical single mother. I was a professional. I was a witness. I pulled out my phone. My fingers, surprisingly, were steady. I opened my email client to susan.friedman@nylegal.com. My family lawyer, the one I was paying in installments that were draining my savings. ccb.carter@rinaldigroup.com. I'd seen the email address flash on Dominic's phone when he'd called. It was a risk, but it was a necessary one. He and his organization needed to know that I was not disappearing into their world. I was documenting. Subject: documentation of threat, witness protection. A. Collins. October 21st, 2025. Susan, as of 8:30 p.m. tonight, I have been subjected to a direct threat against my custodial rights regarding my daughter, Emma. An unknown party sent compromising photographs of me taken at a private event, threatening to use them in family court. This action is directly tied to a business dispute involving Mr. Dominic Rinaldi, as my child's physical safety was also threatened by surveillance at my home. I have accepted a formal offer of protection from Mr. Rinaldi's head of security, Mr. Ben Carter. All movements are being coordinated by his team. I am documenting this chain of events to ensure full legal transparency. I am acting solely to protect my daughter. Please advise on next steps. Ava. I hit send. The whoosh of the sent email was the sound of an anchor setting. I wasn't Dominic's wife. I wasn't a mafia mistress. I was a citizen, creating a legal paper trail. I was establishing a baseline. I was taking control. Dominic finished his conversation and turned back to me. He must have seen the change in my expression, the shift from terror to a cold, hard resolve. "You're okay?" he asked. "I just copied your head of security on an email to my family law attorney," I said flatly. "I'm documenting this entire event as a witness protection arrangement. I will not be painted as an unstable parent." He didn't so much as blink. He just watched me for a second, and I saw something flash in his dark eyes. It wasn't anger. It was respect. "Good," he said, his voice quiet. "That's smart. That's exactly right." He glanced down, his hand going to his cufflink, a nervous gesture that seemed out of place on him. He adjusted the starched white cuff. And under the harsh, humming fluorescent light of the hallway, I saw it clearly. The ink, the symbol on his wrist. It wasn't a blurry glimpse this time. It was stark. It wasn't a polished, professional tattoo. It looked older, slightly faded, like something drawn with purpose, the sharp, geometric symbol. The symbol from the pediatric ICU. "Liam," and I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but in the noisy corridor, it was loud enough to stop him cold. His head snapped up. The composed, controlled mask of the businessman, the conciliator, didn't just crack, it shattered. It was the first genuine, unguarded emotion I had seen from him, and it was raw, agonizing grief. "What did you say?" he asked. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble, but the danger wasn't aimed at me. "Liam," I repeated. My nurse's voice took over, calm, steady, factual, the voice I used when delivering bad news. He was my patient about a year ago, St. Jude's Pediatric ICU. He was brought in after a street incident. Dominic stared at me, his face pale, his jaw locked so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "He had that symbol," I continued, gesturing to his wrist. "Drawn in marker on his ribs. He was terrified. He kept begging us not to wash it off. He said his brother drew it. He told me he said it meant keep them safe." Dominic turned his face to the steel wall. Bracing one hand against it, he squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. "He was my brother," he finally whispered. The sound was rough, like gravel, as if it had been ripped from his throat. "Liam Rinaldi, He was just a kid, 17. He wasn't in the life. He was visiting a friend. Wrong neighborhood, wrong time. Liam Rinaldi. My God, I had never made the connection, the chart, the name. It was a high trauma case, one of many that year, but I had never connected him to this Rinaldi family. It was our symbol, Dominic said, his voice hollow, still facing the wall. From when we were kids, a stupid game we played, pretending to be knights. I drew it on his baseball glove in Little League. Keep them safe. It was our promise. He looked down at his own wrist, at the permanent version of that promise. I got this the day after we buried him, to remember the promise I broke. The air left my lungs. Tasha's rumor about the no civilians rule, it wasn't a business policy. It was a memorial. It was a scar. This man's entire mission to go white, to clean up his family's legacy, wasn't about public relations. It was about Liam. It was about preventing the very thing that was happening to me right now, a civilian, a mother and a child, being pulled into his world. I understood, in that moment, why he had stepped in. He saw Mark, a disruptor. He saw Cade's men watching. He saw the potential for another Liam. And he saw me, a mother with a daughter. I'm sorry, I said. The words were small, painfully inadequate, but they were the only ones I had. He was a sweet boy. He was brave. Dominic. He swallowed, hard, his composure, his armor, snapped back into place. He nodded once, a quick, jerky motion. The moment was over. Thank you, he said gruffly. He trusted me, just a fraction more, and God help me. I trusted him. The service elevator dinged. The heavy steel doors slid open. But it wasn't empty. Elliot Cade was standing inside. He was flanked by two men in suits, but he himself was still holding a flute of champagne, looking as relaxed and out of place as a snake in a garden. Dominic, Cade said, his voice as smooth and sterile as my hospital's operating theater. I thought that was you I saw, taking the scenic route. Dominic stepped slightly in front of me, a subtle, protective shift. Elliot, leaving so soon. Cade's pale, empty eyes slid past Dominic and landed on me. He wasn't looking at me like a woman. He was looking at me like I was a line item on a budget, an obstacle. And this must be the lovely wife, and Cade said the word was a scalpel, dipped in polite sarcasm. A fascinating choice. This is Miss Collins, Dominic said, his voice flat and hard as concrete. She's with me. We're leaving. Cade smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture that didn't touch his eyes. He didn't move from the elevator. He was blocking our exit. I just spoke to the groom's father, Cade said conversationally, as if we were all at the bar. He's very excited about the new logistics merger. It's amazing what our technology can do for these old, family-run businesses. Streamlines everything. He took a delicate sip of champagne. Family is everything in business. Dominic, you know that better than anyone. It's legacy. You have to protect it. But sometimes, protecting that legacy means letting go of the old, inefficient ways. It was a threat, a clean, corporate, daylight threat. Sign the contract, let go of your father's network, or... I'll keep that in mind. Elliot, Dominic said. Now, if you'll excuse us. Cade's smile widened. He finally stepped out of the elevator, gesturing with his champagne flute for us to enter. Of course. My apologies. Have a wonderful night, Miss Collins. I do hope your situation resolves itself. My situation, he knew. The text, the photo, it came from him. We stepped into the elevator. The doors began to close. Oh, and Dominic, Cade called out, his voice echoing in the concrete shaft. That Friday deadline is firm, for the good of the family. The doors slid shut, sealing us in the small, humming metal box. We descended in suffocating silence. My rage was a cold, sharp, living thing. My phone buzzed again. This time, an email. From ben.carter@rinaldigroup.com to Ava Collins. Subject, RE documentation of threat. Miss Deds Collins. Your email is received and logged. Good move. We'll need that paper trail. One more thing you need to know. Cade didn't just target you with that photo. 10 minutes ago, an anonymous email was sent to your hospital's HR director. It was a fabricated disciplinary file. Alleged substance abuse on the job. Gross negligence. It's fake, but it's designed to trigger an immediate suspension and a CPS review. We traced the IP. It came from a shell server, but the network it's routed through belongs to a subsidiary logistics company Cade acquired last month. He's not just threatening your custody, he's attacking your career. He's trying to make you radioactive. I have your daughter and friend. They are 100% safe. We are en route to the LIC location. ETA 5 minutes. We'll meet you there. I read the email twice. Substance abuse, gross negligence, CPS review. These weren't warnings. These were torpedoes. Cade wasn't trying to scare me, and he was trying to erase me. He was trying to neutralize me as a person, to make me a non-credible parent, so that whatever he did to Dominic, I would have no standing. I was the leverage. I was the crowbar he was using to pry open the Rinaldi empire. The elevator doors opened to a dark, concrete garage. The rain was howling outside the open gate. A black SUV, identical to the one Ben was in, was idling by the door, its headlights cutting through the gloom. I stopped walking. Dominic turned. "Ava, we have to go." "He's trying to destroy me," I said, my voice shaking, but not with fear, with rage. He thinks I'm a weakness. He thinks I'm some pathetic single mom from the pity table that he can just delete. "I will fix this," Dominic said, his face a mask of stone. "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "We will. You think I'm just going to go to that safe house and hide while he files reports against me, while he tells the court I'm an unfit mother, while he takes my job?" I marched toward the SUV, my cheap heels clicking on the oil-stained concrete. "I am going to that safe house for one reason: to put my arms around my daughter, to make sure she is safe. And then I'm going with you. Wherever you go to deal with this." He looked confused. "That's not the deal. The deal was to keep you safe." "The deal changed," I said, yanking the heavy car door open. The wind ripped at my hair. Elliot Cade made a mistake. He didn't just choose a random civilian, and he chose a pediatric nurse. We deal with monsters every day. We deal with bullies, with broken systems, and with terrified parents. He wants to talk business. He wants to talk about family. Fine. Let's talk. I got into the car, my wet dress clinging to me. I wasn't a prop anymore. I wasn't bait. I was the center of the storm, and I was done being pushed by the wind. Dominic got in the car beside me, a strange, unreadable look on his face. "Long Island City," he said to the driver. "Step on it." The ride to Long Island City was a tense, rain-lashed silence. The SUV was a black armored bubble slicing through the late-night traffic of the Queensboro Bridge. The city lights were a watercolor blur through the storm. Ben Carter met us in the garage. He was a man who seemed to be made of solid, unmovable blocks. He wasn't overtly muscular, just dense. He had calm eyes, the kind you'd see on a pilot or a surgeon, and he nodded at me with a quiet, professional respect. "They're upstairs, apartment 12B, secure floor, miss. Green is shaken, but the girl is asleep." The girl, my daughter, my Emma. I was out of the car before Dominic, pushing through the fire door, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I wouldn't be able to breathe again until I saw her. The apartment was beautiful, sterile, and soulless. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the raging storm over the East River. It was a corporate ghost town, all beige sofas and glass tables. Tasha was on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale. She shot to her feet when I came in. "Ava!" She grabbed me, her hug so tight it hurt. "My God, Ava, what is going on? Who are these people?" "I'll explain everything," I whispered, my eyes scanning the room. "Where is she?" "In the bedroom. She cried herself to sleep." I walked past her, my wet dress leaving dark footprints on the hardwood floor. I pushed open the bedroom door. and my world clicked back into focus. She was there, curled on her side in the middle of a king-sized bed, her thumb just slipping from her mouth. Her breathing was deep and even. She was safe. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted the salt. I just stood there, my hand on the doorframe, letting the sight of her, the safety of her, wash over me. The wedding, the flashbulbs, Elliot Cade, the fake HR report, it all evaporated. There was only this. I walked over, kissed her damp forehead, and pulled the duvet up to her chin. When I came back out, the dynamic in the room had shifted. Ben was setting up a laptop on the dining table. Tasha was staring, wide-eyed, at Dominic Rinaldi, who was in the kitchen. He had taken off his suit jacket, rolled up the sleeves of his impossibly white shirt, and was opening the sterile, stainless steel refrigerator. He pulled out eggs, milk, a stick of butter. "She's okay," I said to Tasha, my voice thick. "What is he doing?" Tasha whispered, nodding toward the kitchen. Dominic turned around, holding a bag of flour. "It's almost 11 o'clock, he said, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "I figured she might be hungry when she wakes up. Kids like pancakes." Tasha and I just stared. The absurdity of it was overwhelming. This man, who had hotel security remove my ex-husband, who had a personal safe house in Long Island City, who was the target of a high-tech corporate shark, was making pancake batter from scratch. "Are you making breakfast?" We all turned. Emma was standing in the bedroom doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair a mess. I started to move toward her, but Dominic spoke first. His voice, when he talked to her, was different. The gravel was gone. It was soft. "I am," he said, not smiling, but his eyes were gentle. "I was told you were 6. That's a good age for pancakes. Do you like chocolate chips?" Emma nodded, a slow, sleepy smile spreading across her face. "Yes, please." She padded over and climbed onto a bar stool. She wasn't scared of him. Kids have a sixth sense for this stuff. They don't see the rumors or the reputation. They see the intent, and his intent in this moment was just to make her breakfast. That small, domestic act, the smell of vanilla and melting butter, cracked something open in my chest. This man was dangerous. Yes, but he was also the man who carried the memory of his brother, Liam. He was the man who, in the middle of a war, was making sure a 6-year-old girl felt safe. My wall of defenses, the one I'd built against Mark and the world, began to soften. And that scared me more than anything Elliot Cade had done. "Tasha," I said, tearing my eyes away, "take her back to bed. Tell her breakfast will be ready in the morning. We need to talk." Tasha, sensing the shift, nodded. "Come on, sweet pea. Let's build a pillow fort." As she scooped Emma up, Ben Carter cleared his throat. "Dominic, we need to brief Miss Collins, the real situation." The pancakes sizzled on the stove. Dominic flipped one perfectly. "Go ahead, Ben." Ben opened the laptop. The screen lit up, not with spreadsheets, but with complex, dark web-style flow charts. "Miss Collins, that HR report, the custody threat that's just noise. It's the cover fire. The real issue is this." He pointed to a cluster of digital wallet addresses, all flowing into a single account tied to one of Cade's fintech apps. Cade isn't just in the delivery business. He's deep in digital currency, and his assets are dirty. We're talking hundreds of millions from questionable sources. He needs to clean it. He needs to make it look like legitimate, high-volume, transactional revenue. I looked at the chart. It looked like a patient's vitals, erratic and crashing. He's laundering it. Exactly, as Ben said, his fintech apps are the washing machine, but he needs a way to justify the volume. He needs a legitimate, cash-heavy business to fold it into. He needs a cover. Dominic turned from the stove, his face grim. He needs my restaurants. He needs my trucks, my international food import licenses, my cold storage warehouses. He wants to move his digital trash and make it look like he's just selling $1 billion worth of frozen ravioli. "I told him no," Dominic continued, his voice hard. "I told him 6 months ago, My family is finished with gray revenue. We are 100% legitimate, audited, and transparent. He sees that as a weakness. He thinks I'm soft. So he attacks me. I said, the civilian. You're fighting him in the shadows. Dominic, I said. The pieces clicking together with a cold, clinical clarity. He's trying to drag you back into the gray world you fought to leave. But he made a mistake. He attacked me. And he did it in the open. I pointed to the laptop. That fake HR report. The anonymous letter to the court. Those aren't shadow operations. Those are legal and digital footprints. They are traceable. Dominic and Ben looked at me. I know someone, and I said, Assistant District Attorney Jordan Price. He prosecuted a complex fraud case that came through my ER last year. A patient with a forged insurance policy that unraveled a massive identity theft ring. He specializes in this: financial crimes, fintech, white collar. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Ava, you can't. You go to the DA. You put yourself on Cade's permanent radar. This is my fight. No civilians. That's the rule. Your rule is why Liam is a memory, I said, my voice sharp, but not unkind. He broke that rule when he put a man outside my house. He broke it when he threatened my daughter. He made me a combatant, Dominic, so I'll fight my way. I took a deep breath. We don't go to Price officially. Not yet. We consult him, informally. I'll give him my statement. I'll be a witness. I'm a nurse. I understand protocols. I understand safety logs, temperature checks, cold storage. You just tell me what to look for. I'll be the one to document why Cade is too contaminated to do business with. A new kind of deal was being struck. The next few days were a blur. I worked from the safe house, a fortress of beige cushions. On Ben's secure laptop, my lawyer, Susan, was a bulldog. She filed a counter motion against the fake HR report, demanding the hospital trace the source. Then the other letter came. It wasn't to me. It was an anonymous, concerned citizen letter sent directly to the family court judge overseeing my divorce. It alleged that Emma was being exposed to known organized crime figures, and it included a link to the wedding video. Just as Cade had planned, Mark pounced. Susan called me, her voice tight with fury. Ava, Mark's legal team just filed an emergency motion. They're citing that anonymous letter. They're demanding temporary sole custody and a full psychiatric evaluation. For you. He was jealous, stupid, and being used like a puppet. He's boxing us in, I told Dominic that night. The smell of pancakes was long gone, replaced by the scent of stale coffee. He's using the law against me and the shadows against you. Dominic was staring out the window at the lights of the city. Then we drag him into the light, he said. There's an industry summit, Brooklyn Navy Yard, tomorrow. Every major logistics and F&B player in the city will be there, including Cade. He turned to me, his eyes dark with a new resolve. I'm announcing a new supply chain transparency initiative, full open-source tracking, mandatory compliance audits for all partners. I'm going to make transparency the new cost of doing business in this city. Let's see him fight me in the sunshine. I'm coming with you, I said. Ava, no. It's a press event. I'm not your wife, Dominic, I said, standing up. I'm not your girlfriend. I am your chief compliance witness. I'm the civilian he targeted. Let Cade see me. Let him see me taking notes. The Brooklyn Navy Yard was vast, industrial and cold. The wind whipped off the water. Dominic was on a panel under bright white lights, talking about digital accountability and ethical sourcing. Elliot Cade was sitting in the front row, smiling that dead, placid smile. I sat in the back row, my phone propped up, legally recording the public forum. I was just another face in the crowd. When the panel broke, Cade approached Dominic, shaking his hand. A bold move. Dominic, very modern. But all this transparency, it's expensive. It cuts into profits. With Cade was another man. He was younger, with restless, twitchy energy. He was all sharp angles and hollow cheeks, wearing a suit that looked like it had been slept in. This was Cole Mercer, Cade's right-hand man. Mercer's eyes slid over me, dismissive and laced with contempt. He leaned in and whispered to Cade, loud enough for me to hear, She's the nurse. Huh. Then he looked back at Dominic and smirked. Your new wife seems smart. Rinaldi, taking notes for you. Cade chuckled. Dominic's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Before Dominic could speak, I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I looked Cole Mercer dead in the eye. I'm a nurse, I said, my voice clear and cold as the wind outside. I'm trained to read two things, vital signs and signs of deception, and you, sir, are failing both. Mercer's smirk vanished. Cade's smile twitched. As they turned to walk away, Mercer, clearly irritated, jammed his hand into his pocket and pulled out a small, folding utility knife. He flipped it open and, in a strange, practiced tick, began cleaning his fingernails. I watched his hands. He had a bizarre way of holding the knife. He wasn't gripping the handle. He was bracing the back of the blade against his index finger, using his thumb to apply leverage. It was an awkward, inefficient, and highly specific grip. A nurse's mind files away details. I filed that one away. That night, the retaliation came. We were back in the safe house. Emma and Tasha were asleep. It was just me, Dominic, and Ben, poring over ADA Price's recommendations. Ben's secure phone buzzed. He picked it up. His entire body went rigid. When which location? Dominic was on his feet. What is it? Rinaldi's on Mulberry Street, Ben said, his voice grim. A power cut. But it wasn't the grid. Someone cut the main line in the alley about 30 minutes ago. My God, I whispered. It's fine, Ben said, holding up a hand. The battery backups on the cold storage cameras kicked in, just like you installed last month. I'm pulling the feed now. He turned the laptop. We watched. The timestamp read 9:04 p.m. The walk-in freezer was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the grainy, green-white of the infrared camera. A figure entered. They were dressed in the generic uniform of a food delivery service. They were carrying a standard-issue insulated box. The figure moved quickly, checking the camera, clearly thinking it was dead. They went to a back shelf, behind a rack of veal shanks, and placed the box in the shadows, planting it. He's planting something, Dominic growled. Evidence, contraband, something to set us up for a raid. Rewind that, I said, my eyes glued to the screen. Just a few seconds, the part where he sets the box down. Ben rewound the footage. The figure fumbled with the box, then pulled a utility knife to cut a zip tie. My breath caught in my throat. He held the knife. He held it just like Cole Mercer, not by the handle. He braced the back of the in-case blade against his index finger, using his thumb to work the trigger, that same weird proprietary grip. It's him, I whispered, my blood running cold. That's Cole Mercer. That's Cade's guy. I saw him do that today at the Navy Yard. Dominic's face went dark, the civilized mask replaced by something cold and old. Ben, send a team. Now, I want that box, and I want it gone. Clean it out. No, I said, my voice sharp. Both men stared at me. I put my hand on the laptop, my eyes meeting Dominic's. Don't you see this is the trap? You clean it out. You get your hands dirty. You hide the evidence. It becomes your word against theirs. Cade wants you to act like a mafia boss. So what do we do? Ava, Dominic asked, his voice dangerously quiet. You don't touch it, I said, the plan forming, cold and perfect. You don't clean it. You leave Cade's dirty hand right where it is. And tomorrow morning, I make a call. I'm a nurse. I'm a mandatory reporter. And I'm going to report a suspected public health violation. We're not going to call your guys. We're going to call the Department of Health. I stared at Dominic. He and Ben were looking at me like I'd just grown a second head. Call the Department of Health, I repeated, my voice ringing with a conviction that surprised even me. He wants you to clean it out. Dominic, he wants you to act like the man your father was. He's baiting you. You send your own team in the dead of night. You disappear that box. You're guilty. You've destroyed the chain of custody. It's your word against his. But if you call the DOH, you are the victim. You are the responsible business owner reporting a potential health code violation. You're the one protecting the public." Ben was the first to speak, his voice a cautious rumble. "Miss Collins, Ava, that's a hell of a gamble. We don't know what's in that box. If Cade was smart, it's not just undeclared fish. It could be something genuinely hazardous. They could shut you down for weeks." "He's not smart. He's arrogant," I countered, my mind racing, triage mode fully engaged. "He's a fintech guy, not a bioterrorist. He wouldn't risk that kind of blowback. He planted something dirty enough to fail an inspection, to give him leverage, to force a fine or a bribe that he could then use against you. He wants to stain your white reputation." Dominic's eyes hadn't left mine. He was seeing the logic, the clean, undeniable, legal trap I was laying. He finally nodded, a slow, decisive movement. "She's right, he's baiting my old instincts." He turned to Ben. "She's 100% right. Lock down the Mulberry Street location, no one in, no one out, post a guard, at 8 a.m. I'm personally calling the commissioner. We found tampering with our cold storage. We found a suspicious non-Rinaldi package. We're requesting an immediate inspection for the safety of our customers." Ben allowed himself a small, grim smile. "You're putting his dirty hands right in the lap of the city government. I like it. It's done." Dominic looked back at me, the ice in his eyes replaced by a flicker of something else. Gratitude, respect. "You're leading. Ava, what's next?" "Want to know we fight on 3 fronts," I said, feeling the exhaustion being burned away by a cold, sharp adrenaline. "You and Ben handle the physical front, the warehouse, Cade's hardware. I'll handle the other 2, the community, and the law." The next morning, I called Tasha. She was still at the safe house, going stir-crazy. Emma was drawing pictures of the castle in the sky, blissfully unaware. "Tasha, I need you to be my proxy war," I said, pacing the beige carpet. "Ava, I'm a kindergarten teacher, not a soldier." "Exactly. You're a teacher. You're a trusted face. Mark and Kate are trying to paint me as a mafia mom to the court, to the school. I need you to go back to the neighborhood. I need you to talk to the other parents. Mrs. Petrov. The moms from the PTA, not about Dominic. Not about this. About me." Tasha was quiet, understanding immediately. "Remind them," I pushed, "who ran the bake sale that funded the new library books. Remind them who volunteered as the school nurse for 6 months when the city cut the budget. Remind them who sat with their kids when they had fevers. You're not defending me, Tasha. You're just reminding them who I am. Re-establish my identity as Emma's mom." "On the Ava Collins Community Defense Fund," Tasha said, her voice turning hard. "Consider it done. I'll start with the phone tree. 1 front secured. Now for the next." I didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "We need to talk, alone, about Emma." Dominic, who was on the phone across the room, saw my face and immediately hung up. "No, you're not." "It's a trap," Ben said from the laptop. "I know," I said, "but it's also an opportunity. He wants to meet. I'll meet him on my terms." I texted back, the cafe across from the hospital. "Noon. It's public. It's bright daylight. Take it or leave it." He replied instantly, "Fine." Ben didn't like it, but he saw my logic. "You're not going in blind." He spent 10 minutes taping a microphone, no bigger than a grain of rice, to the inside of my shirt. The feed went straight to a recorder on his laptop, just in case. I walked into the daily grind at noon. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant. Mark was already in a booth. I was shocked. He looked good. His hair was cut. His suit was new. Expensive. Cade's money. "Ava," he said, not standing up. He smirked. "You look terrible." "What do you want?" "Mark?" I sat opposite him, my hands on the table. He leaned forward, his voice dropping into that confidential, wheedling tone I hated. "I'm gonna win. Ava. You know I am. I'm getting sole custody. My lawyers, they're the best in the city." "You don't have money for those lawyers." "Mark." That smirk again. "I have friends now. Good friends, Mr. Cade, he sees the injustice of this situation. He sees what you're dragging our daughter into. He's horrified. He's willing to fund my legal battle, indefinitely. My blood ran cold, but I kept my face blank. How generous. He is, Mark said, believing his own lie. But he's also a peacemaker. He thinks this has all been a misunderstanding. He's willing to advise me to drop the emergency motion. We can go back to 50-50 custody. All this just poof. It goes away. In exchange for what? You're smart, he said, reaching for his coffee. Just talk to your new boyfriend. Tell him to sign Mr. Cade's logistics deal. That's it. He just signs the paper, and you get your life back. You get Emma back. There it was. The leverage. The explicit threat. He was using our daughter as a bargaining chip in a corporate hostile takeover. You're selling our child, Mark. I'm protecting her, he hissed, his voice rising, drawing stares. From him, from the Rinaldi family, from that mafia trash. I pressed the stop button on the voice memo app on my phone, which I had also started as a backup. I placed the phone on the table. Thank you, Mark, I said, my voice clear and cold. That was incredibly helpful. His face went pale. He finally understood. I stood up and walked out of the cafe, my head held high, the recording safe. That evening, I met with ADA Jordan Price in the back of a quiet city library. I passed him the encrypted thumb drive containing Ben's audio file and my own. Price listened, his expression grim. This is textbook. Coercion in the third degree. Using a custody hearing to leverage a business deal, the judge will be incandescent, as long as Ben Carter can provide a sworn affidavit as to the chain of custody of his file. This is gold. Miss Collins, this stops being a family court matter and starts being a criminal one. I had my third front. When I got back to the safe house, the atmosphere was thick. The DOH inspection had happened. It was a mess, Dominic said, pacing. Cade was sloppy. The box was full of undeclared high-value fish roe, packed improperly. It's a major violation, but it's not catastrophic. But here's the kicker, Ben added. We handed them the security footage of Cole planting it. The inspectors, they were confused. This isn't a simple health code violation anymore. They've logged the box and the footage as evidence in a criminal tampering investigation. Cade's plan to frame you just blew up in his face. Cade must have been furious, because an hour later, Dominic's personal phone rang. Not his business line, his cell. He put it on speaker. Dominic? Elliot Cade's voice was smooth, silky, and devoid of all warmth. This misunderstanding has gone entirely too far. Has it? Elliot, Dominic said, his voice hard. It has. We're businessmen. These games, they're childish. Let's meet, just us, settle this. My leased warehouse in Red Hook. Tonight, 10 o'clock, and bring your new partner, Miss Collins. It's time we all had an honest conversation. He was inviting me, naming me. No, Dominic said, the moment Cade hung up. Absolutely not. You are not going. He called me his partner, I said, my heart beating a slow, heavy drum. He knows. He knows I'm not just a prop. He knows I'm the one who called the DOH. He knows I'm the one who saw Cole's knife grip. He's not inviting me as a shield. Dominic, he's inviting me as the primary threat. All the more reason for you to stay here. No, I said, standing to face him. I'm not the leverage anymore. I am the witness. I am the mother he threatened. I am a legal party to this, and he knows it. If I hide, I look guilty. I look like your mistress, hidden away. If I go as the civilian he harassed, and I face him down, I am going. Dominic stared at me for a long, hard minute. He saw I wouldn't bend. Fine, he bit out, his jaw tight with a fury I knew wasn't aimed at me. He turned to Ben. Full mobilization, 2 extraction routes, land and water. We're not going in blind. He turned back to me. But we do this my way. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, flat, black device, like a thin credit card. This is a panic button, military grade. It never leaves your hand. The second you feel wrong, you press it. Ben and his team will be in that building in under 2 minutes. He held my gaze, 3 rules, Ava, my rules. 1, you stay near the only marked exit. 2, you do not, under any circumstances, accept any food or drink. 3, if I tell you to run, you run. You don't ask why. You just go. Do you understand? I nodded. I understand. I took the button. It's cool metal, a heavy weight in my palm. But I have rules, too. He and Ben looked at me. My rules, I said, my voice as steady as his. 3 legal rules. 1, I will inform them they are being recorded. New York is a one-party consent state, but informing them makes the audio cleaner in court. 2, we will have a registered witness. Ben, I want you on an open recording line. 3, we will register our escape route. I'm logging our time in and time out with my lawyer, and I'm sending her a pin of our exact location. Ben almost smiled. A legal paper trail for a hostage situation? I like it. Miss Collins. While Ben and Dominic finalized the routes, I called Tasha. Hey, we need to move Emma again, just for tonight. Ava, Tasha's voice was thin with exhaustion. I know. The community church downtown, the one with the 24-hour nursery? It's public. It's safe. No one would look for her there. Okay, she sighed. Okay, Ava, be safe. Before we left, I sat at the sterile glass desk in the safe house. I found a piece of hotel stationery. My hand was shaking. My dearest Emma, if Mom is late coming home tonight, I need you to know something. It's not because I don't love you. It's because I'm doing everything I can to make all your tomorrows safer than today. Be good for Tasha. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I folded it and put it in my pocket, next to the panic button. The warehouse in Red Hook smelled of salt, rust, and damp, molding wood. The rain hammered on the tin roof. It was a vast cavern, lit by a single, harsh work light. Cade was there, and he was sitting at a folding table, as if at a PTA meeting. Cole Mercer, his right-hand man, stood in the shadows behind him, his restless energy making my skin crawl. Dominic, Miss Collins, thank you for coming, Cade said, his voice echoing. Let's skip the pleasantries. Elliot, Dominic said. He stood in the center of the room, not approaching the table. I stood right beside him, a partner, not a possession. Fine, Cade said. He tapped a thick manila file on the table in front of him. Here's the offer. Simple. You sign over exclusive logistics rights to Rinaldi Cold Storage, a 99-year lease, for $1. He slid the file across the table. My face, pictures of me, the grainy wedding photo, the fake HR report, the letter to the court. In return, Cade continued, his voice a silky, corporate monotone. This all disappears. The court motion is dropped. The HR complaint is retracted. Your partner gets her kid back. She gets her job back. She gets her life. And you get to keep playing the legitimate businessman. This was it. The naked threat, the barter, my life for his company. Dominic's body was vibrating with a rage I could feel from a foot away. He started to speak, his voice a low growl that was barely human. I put my hand on his forearm. He stopped. He looked at me. I shook my head once. My turn. I stepped forward. I took my phone from my pocket. I placed it on the damp metal table. I pressed the red record button on the voice memo app. The small click echoed in the vast room. Mr. Cade, I said, my voice clear, steady, and loud. Just so you are aware, this conversation is being recorded. Cole Mercer straightened up, his hand twitching toward his jacket. That's illegal, Cade snapped, his composure finally breaking. Actually, it's not, I said, my nurse voice taking over calm, factual, unshakable. New York is a one-party consent state, and as a party to this conversation, I am informing you, this is for my legal protection, as you are currently violating New York penal law, Section 135.60 coercion, and Section 155.05 extortion by threat. Cade stared at me. The color was draining from his face. He had expected tears. He had expected a hysterical, pleading mother. He had not expected this. I am not your partner, Mr. Cade, I said, standing tall. I am a civilian mother you have targeted. I am the registered nurse whose career you tried to destroy. And before we discuss anything about Mr. Rinaldi's business, I require 3 prerequisite guarantees. Not from him. I gestured to Dominic. From you. The power in the room had just shifted. The victim was gone. The negotiator was here. 1, I said, holding up a finger. You will cease all contact, direct or indirect, with my daughter, my family, and my place of employment. 2, you will issue a full, digital, and verifiable retraction of the fabricated HR report. 3, you will commit, on this recording, to a civilian safety clause. No women, no children, no non-combatants, ever again. Those are my terms. I looked him dead in the eye. Once you agree to those, then you and Mr. Rinaldi can talk about his trucks. The silence in the Red Hook warehouse was a physical thing. It was heavier than the damp, salty air. Elliot Cade just stared at me, the amused, reptilian smile gone, replaced by a flat, cold blankness. Cole Mercer, his right-hand man, took a half-step forward, his body coiled. Dominic beside me was a statue carved from granite. Cade finally let out a small huff. It wasn't a laugh, it was a puff of air, a dismissal. Terms. You're giving me terms, he looked at Dominic. You really let your help get this far off the leash. Rinaldi, it's sad. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to Cole. That was all it took. Cole Mercer smiled, a slow, ugly stretching of his lips. You know, lady, he said, his voice a low, twitchy rasp. You've been a real pain in the ass. He started walking toward me. I didn't move. My eyes were locked on him. My right hand, in the pocket of my coat, was wrapped around the panic button. My thumb was on the trigger. Cole, Dominic said, his voice a low, lethal warning. He shifted his weight, moving just slightly in front of me. Relax, boss, Cole sneered, not stopping. I'm just going to get the phone. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's doing. He was 3 feet away. I could smell the stale cigarettes on him. My thumb pressed down. And at that exact second, a sound like a freight train ripped through the night, a massive, corrugated steel door behind Cade, the one facing the loading dock, began to roll upward with a deafening, metallic shriek. Blinding white headlights flooded the cavernous, dark warehouse. Cole froze. Cade spun around, his face a mask of disbelief. NYC Department of Health, a voice boomed over a megaphone, echoing off the steel walls. We have a warrant to inspect these premises, based on an anonymous tip regarding illegal food storage and criminal tampering. 2 white vans and a city-issued sedan rolled onto the warehouse floor. Men and women in official DOH windbreakers, carrying clipboards and heavy-duty flashlights, began to pour out. Cade was speechless. This was a variable he had never, in a million years, calculated. He was a fintech god. He didn't deal with health inspectors. Ben? This was Ben's work. My DOH call about Mulberry Street. Ben must have used the evidence from that, the footage of Cole, and anonymously tipped them off to Cade's own storage facility. He'd used my legal, civilian tactic and turned it into a full-blown raid. Dominic saw his opening. He stepped away from me, into the light, his hands open, the picture of the reasonable businessman caught in a rival's mess. Elliot, this looks bad, Dominic said, his voice projecting just enough for the inspectors to hear. You've got city officials at your door? I've got a civilian mother you've been harassing. This whole thing, it's over. Cade's face was white. He was trapped. But I'm a reasonable man, Dominic continued, his voice smooth. You want a logistics route, fine? He gestured to a map on the wall. You can have the Bronx reload line, all of it. He looked at me, a quick, sharp glance. Trust me. But, Dominic said, turning back to Cade, in exchange you sign a memorandum. Right now, you agree, on paper, to Miss Collins' 3 terms. 1, all contact with her child, and her employer ceases immediately. 2, a full, verifiable retraction of the fabricated HR complaint. 3, a permanent, binding civilian safety clause. You sign it. We're done. Cade was vibrating. He was being outplayed in his own building, in front of city officials. He looked at Dominic, his eyes full of venom. He knew, and I knew, that the Bronx reload line was worthless. Ben had briefed us the city was rezoning that entire district in 6 months. Dominic was trading a dead asset for my life. You, Cade started to say. But Cole Mercer, his right-hand man, didn't have the patience. He wasn't a strategist. He was a thug. His world had just been turned upside down, and he saw the source. Me? You bitch, he snarled, his eyes wild. He wasn't aiming for the phone anymore. He was aiming for me. He lunged. It was so fast. He shoved me, hard, with both hands. You did this. I stumbled backward, tripping over a rusty pallet. I hit the concrete floor, my hip and shoulder exploding in pain. The panic button flew out of my hand, skittering across the floor. Ava, Dominic roared. But the DOH inspectors were closer. Hey, sir, step away from the woman now, one of them shouted. Cole stood over me, his chest heaving, and as he raised his hand, his cuff rode up. Under the harsh white headlights, I saw it. It wasn't just a habit. It was a scar. A pale, jagged, ugly line of scar tissue running right along the side of his index finger, exactly where he braced his knife. It was proof. He assaulted her, one of the inspectors yelled. Call it in, get NYPD here. Cole looked down, saw the inspector, saw me staring at his hand. He realized what he'd done. He'd just assaulted a civilian in front of half a dozen city witnesses. From the sedan, a man stepped out. He wasn't in a DOH jacket. He was in a suit. He was on the phone. I recognized him. Jordan Price, the assistant district attorney. My informal consultation. Ben hadn't just tipped off the DOH. He'd tipped off the DA's office. He'd told Price exactly when and where the raid was happening. He'd piggybacked a criminal investigation onto a health inspection. We have visual confirmation of the assault, Mr. Price. I heard Ben's voice, startlingly clear. It was coming from the open line on my phone, still on the table. Elliot Cade's face crumpled. He wasn't a master of the universe. He was a criminal, caught in a warehouse, whose employee had just committed a violent, witnessable crime. You idiot, he screamed at Cole. Then he turned to me. The mask was gone. This was the real Elliot Cade. Delete that tape, he commanded, pointing at my phone. Delete it right now. I pushed myself up on one elbow, my hips screaming. I looked at him, at the inspectors, at Jordan Price walking calmly toward us. No, Mr. Cade, I said, my voice shaking but loud. This phone and the backup recording, mister. Carter is making now belongs to the assistant district attorney. It's part of the chain of evidence. The rain, which had been hammering the roof, seemed to find a new level of fury. The wind howled, and with a sound like a cannon shot, a transformer on a pole outside the loading dock exploded in a brilliant blue-white flash. Crack boom! The headlights, the flashlights, every single source of light died instantly. The warehouse was plunged into absolute, total, suffocating darkness. People yelled, someone screamed. It was chaos. The sound of the storm was the only thing in the world. Ava, Dominic's voice cut through the dark. A hand, not gentle, grabbed my arm. We're going now! He hauled me to my feet. I didn't care about the pain. I just ran. My hand locked in his. We weren't heading for the main door. We were running toward a small service exit I hadn't even seen. This isn't finished. Rinaldi, Cade's voice shrieked behind us in the dark. You hear me? It's not finished. We burst through the metal door into a narrow alley. The rain was a solid, freezing wall of water. It wasn't rain. It was a deluge. Ben was there, the black SUV idling, the engine a low thrum against the storm. Dominic didn't wait. He shoved me against the side of the vehicle, shielding me with his body as he yanked the passenger door open. We were soaked. In 1 second, my hair was a mat, plastered to my skull. My dress was a second. Freezing skin. I was shaking. from the cold, from the adrenaline, from the fall. He got the door open, but he didn't push me in. He just stopped. He was inches from me, his hand braced on the car roof, the other on the door, trapping me against the cold metal. Water streamed down his face, off his jaw, from his hair. In the faint, flickering light from a street lamp at the end of the alley, our eyes locked. The CEO was gone. The conciliator was gone. I wasn't the nurse. I wasn't the victim. We were just two people who had walked into a fire and, somehow, were walking out. We had chosen the law, the messy, complicated, legal way, instead of the way of his father. And we had won. "Ava," he said, my name. It was a rough, broken sound. And he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle, romantic, fairy tale kiss. It was a crash. It was desperate and hard and full of pressure. It was the taste of salt from the sea air and cold rain and the undeniable, solid fact of him. It was the pressure valve on 48 hours of terror. My hands, of their own accord, fisted in the lapels of his soaked, ruined suit jacket. His hand left the door and cupped the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my wet hair, holding me steady, holding me there. It wasn't a surrender. It was an alliance. It was a seal on the promise that we were in this together. It lasted 5 seconds, or maybe 5 years. He pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. We were both breathing hard, our breath pluming in the cold air. "Get in the car," he said, his voice a low, raw gravel. I scrambled in. He slammed the door and was in the driver's side in a second. Ben was gone. He must have been in a follow car, directing the extraction. The tires spun on the wet asphalt, and we shot out of the alley. My heart was a hummingbird in my chest. Dominic was on the phone, his voice already back to that hard, precise command. He's signing, yes, his lawyer is faxing it to yours right now, a temporary restraining order and a full civil agreement based on her terms. He's trying to get ahead of the assault charge. He listened. Good, and the blog post. He hung up and glanced at me. It's done. Cade signed the cease and desist. It's a legal line in the sand. He'll look for a way around it. But for now, he's legally bound to stay away from you, Emma, and the hospital. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. And Ben already leaked the other story, the DOH inspection, by morning. Every restaurant blog in New York will be running the headline, "Rinaldi Group cooperates with city inspectors to expose supply chain contamination." My plan to go white, you just made it happen. I stared out the window, the city lights a blur of neon and water. I had done that. "Take me to the church," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Please, I need my daughter." He didn't argue, he just drove. The community church on 4th Street was quiet, a small island of peace in the storm. Tasha was where I'd left her, asleep in a rocking chair in the brightly lit nursery, her head on her chest. Emma was in a small cot, her face peaceful, her breathing even. I touched Tasha's shoulder. She jerked awake, her eyes wide with fear. "Ava, oh my God, you're soaked to the bone. Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I whispered, the words feeling strange and true. "It's over, for now." I leaned down and slid my arms under Emma, lifting her warm, sleeping body. She stirred, murmured "Mommy," and buried her face in my neck, her small arms wrapping around me. I held her, breathing in the smell of baby shampoo and crayons, and the last of the ice around my heart finally broke. Tasha followed me to the curb. The black SUV was there, a dark shadow waiting. She looked at me, really looked at me, my wet hair, my ruined dress, the bruise no doubt forming on my hip, and the look in my eyes. Her gaze was a mixture of pure terror and a fierce, burning pride. "Ava Collins," she said, her voice low and odd, "you just did a real adult thing, like a terrifying run-into-the-fire lioness thing. I honestly don't know if I should be proud of you or get you committed." I managed a small, tired smile, my arms tightening around Emma. "Both, Tasha," I said. "Probably both." I opened the car door, climbed in with my daughter, and didn't look back. The kiss in the alley was a flashpoint. It tasted like rain and desperation and a victory that cost too much, and it hung in the air between us during the silent, tense drive back to the safe house. He had pulled me from the fire, and I had pulled him from the shadows. But it wasn't an ending. The hearing for Mark's emergency motion, the one Cade had funded, was 2 days later. The family courtroom on Jeroloman Street was cold, fluorescent, and smelled like stale coffee and floor wax. It was a different kind of warehouse, a different kind of war. This was my territory. I sat beside my lawyer, Susan Friedman, my new suit, a crisp, dark navy paid for by Dominic's legal fund, which I insisted on logging as a formal, interest-bearing loan felt like armor. Dominic was not there. We had agreed. His presence would be poison. Mark was across the room, looking nervous, his expensive new suit already rumpled. His lawyer was the one who looked confident. He was Cade's man, all $1,000 shoes and shark-like smile. "Your Honor," Cade's lawyer began, his voice smooth, "we are here on a simple matter of child safety. Miss Collins, since separating from my client, has exhibited a pattern of reckless behavior." He held up a tablet, the wedding video, the dip, the crowd cheering. He brought up the society blog links, the ones that had circulated at my hospital. "She is, Your Honor, openly associating with Mr. Dominic Rinaldi, a man whose family is known. She's bringing our client's 6-year-old daughter into that environment." He presented Cade's anonymous, fabricated letter to the court. "We have reason to believe the child is being exposed to danger, instability, and organized crime figures." The judge, a woman in her late 50s with tired eyes, looked at me. "Miss Collins, this is a very serious allegation." Susan stood up. "Your Honor, the defense has a context for these creative allegations. First, we'd like to submit into evidence a formal, notarized letter from Miss Collins' employer, St. Jude's Hospital." She handed it to the bailiff. "It states that the anonymous HR complaint Mr. Cade's lawyer is referring to was investigated and found to be a malicious, fabricated, and externally sourced attempt to damage a nurse with an exemplary, unblemished, 12-year record of service. The hospital has, in fact, turned that data over to the NYPD." The judge's eyebrows shot up. "Second, Susan continued, her voice sharp. "Mr. Benson's counsel speaks of danger. We'd like to submit the official DOH inspection report from the Red Hook warehouse incident 2 nights ago." Mark's lawyer actually flinched. "This report," Susan said, "filed by the Department of Health and co-signed by an observer from the district attorney's office, lists Miss Collins as the victim of an assault perpetrated by a Mr. Cole Mercer. It states she was at the location as a key witness in an ongoing criminal tampering and corporate extortion investigation. The man she was associating with, Mr. Rinaldi, was, in fact, the one who called in the city inspectors." The room was silent. The narrative had just been ripped apart. "And finally, Your Honor," Susan said, "Miss Collins would like to speak for herself." I stood. My legs were shaking, but my voice was not. "Your Honor," I began, looking directly at the judge, "I am not a lawyer. I'm a pediatric nurse. My entire life, my entire career, is built on one thing: safety protocols. When my daughter and I were targeted by Mr. Cade, I did what I was trained to do. I established a protocol. I spoke clearly. I told her about the anonymous threat. I told her about the man outside my house. I told her about the immediate decision to move my daughter to a secure, documented corporate location under the protection of a bonded security team. I did not hide. Your Honor, I created a paper trail." I motioned to Susan. "I CC'd my lawyer on my very first email to Mr. Carter, establishing my role as a witness in need of protection, not a girlfriend. I set boundaries. I demanded that Mr. Rinaldi and his team operate with full legal transparency, which they did. The safety rules I set for Emma were clear, documented, and absolute. I was never reckless. I was a mother protecting her child." The judge watched me, her gaze no longer tired, but sharp, assessing. "And as for Mr. Benson's fatherly concern," Susan said, turning back to the judge, "we have one final piece of evidence. This is an audio recording obtained by my client in a public cafe, in which Mr. Benson explicitly states the terms of his custody arrangement." She pressed play. The courtroom filled with Mark's voice, clear as a bell. "He's willing to advise me to drop the emergency motion. All this just poof. It goes away. Just talk to your new boyfriend. Tell him to sign Mr. Cade's logistics deal. That's it. He just signs the paper. And you get your life back. You get Emma back." Mark had slumped in his chair, his face the color of ash. The judge turned a shade of deep, arterial red. She took off her glasses. "Mr. Benson," she said, her voice lethally quiet, "in my 15 years on this bench, I have seen greed and I have seen pettiness, but I have rarely seen a parent so callously and explicitly use their own child as a bargaining chip in a corporate shakedown. You didn't file this motion out of concern. You filed it out of greed, at the behest of your new friends." She slammed her gavel. "Motion dismissed. Miss Collins retains full, sole custody. Mr. Benson, your visitation is now suspended pending the results of a mandatory 6-month therapeutic program. You will not come within 500 feet of Miss Collins or your daughter until a court-appointed therapist signs off. We are done here." I let out the breath I felt like I had been holding since the wedding. I had won. The fallout was immediate. The DOH story, the one Ben had leaked, had legs. The headline, "Rinaldi cooperates with city inspectors," had gone viral in the business world. An independent financial journalist, intrigued by the story, started digging. "You need to see this," Ben said, showing me his laptop a few days later. We were back in my own apartment. The lease on the safe house terminated. The journalist had connected the dots, the Red Hook DOH raid, the sudden failed motion in family court. The public-facing transparency initiative Dominic had announced at the Navy Yard. He had pulled metadata from the cold storage logs. He had found the money laundering. Cade's fintech empire was built on a lie. His stock, which had been the darling of the new tech exchange, plummeted. It dropped 10% in an hour. By noon, it was down 15%. Cade was a cornered animal, and cornered animals are desperate. His last-ditch effort was pathetic and almost brilliant. A video surfaced. It was grainy, shot at night, seemingly from across a street. It showed Dominic. He was handing a thick manila envelope to a man who looked distinctly like the DOH inspector from the warehouse raid. A payoff. "It's a deep fake," Dominic said, his voice flat. "He was in my living room, standing by the window. He's trying to undo the Rinaldi cooperates story. He's trying to say I bribed the inspectors." "Then we fight back," I said. This time, Jordan Price didn't just consult. He, along with Ben Carter, held a press conference. They didn't just deny the video, they dissected it. "This is not a refutation," Jordan Price said, standing at a podium. "This is a digital autopsy." Ben Carter, acting as a forensic video expert, pointed to a massive screen. If you look at the source data, the video's light is corrupt. The shadow on the official's face is at a 30-degree angle. The shadow on Mr. Rinaldi's hand, he zoomed in, is at a 45-degree angle. The lighting source is impossible. It's a fabrication, and a sloppy one. Cade wasn't just a criminal. He was, in the end, a fraud. The stock didn't just drop, it evaporated. Dominic seized the moment. He didn't just take the win, he changed the game. He released the Rinaldi white paper. It wasn't just a press release, it was a manifesto. Total supply chain transparency, available to the public, new contracts guaranteeing a fair, living wage for all employees, from dishwashers to truck drivers. And one final, binding corporate mandate. It was 3 words. Civilians are inviolable. It was the Liam Rule. It was a promise, made public, a new code for the city. The war was over. I had my daughter, I had my job, I had my life. That night, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. I was home. Really home. Tasha had gone back to her own apartment. It was just me and Emma, in her small bedroom. The sound of a soft rain, not a storm, just a rain tapping against the window. I was reading Goodnight Moon, Goodnight Stars, Goodnight Air. My smart doorbell pinged. My heart didn't stop. It didn't pound. It just kept beating. I walked into the living room, Emma's sleepy breathing on my shoulder. I tapped the screen. It was Elliot Cade. He was standing on my doorstep in the rain. He was alone. No Cole, who had been arrested for the assault in the warehouse. No bodyguards. His expensive suit was soaked, plastered to his frame. His hair was a mess. He looked small. He saw the camera light click on. "Ava," he said. His voice was raw, stripped of all its corporate silk. It was just a man. "Ava, please, don't hang up. Just talk to me. Just me and you. We can fix this. I can make it right." He was desperate. He was ruined, and he had come to the one person he thought he had broken, begging for a lifeline. I looked at his pathetic, drenched face on the screen. I thought of the man outside my house. I thought of the fake HR report. I thought of my daughter crying in Tasha's arms. I thought of Mark's voice, selling his own child. I pressed the intercom button. My voice was calm, clear, and amplified by the small speaker outside. "There's nothing to talk about, Elliot," I said. "From now on, everything goes through my lawyers and the district attorney's office." He flinched, as if I'd slapped him. "Ava, please." "You already had your chance to be a decent human being," I said. I turned off the feed. I left him standing outside in the rain, in the city that had forgotten him, and went back to read the end of the story to my daughter. Turning Elliot Cade away from my door was a different kind of victory. It wasn't the hot, sharp adrenaline of the warehouse, or the cold, shaking triumph of the courtroom. It was quiet. It was the sound of a heavy, steel-reinforced door clicking shut, followed by the sound of my daughter's steady breathing as I carried her back to bed. The war was over. The cleanup was just beginning. The news of Cade's full implosion didn't come via anonymous text or a threatening whisper. It came a week later on the front page of the Wall Street Journal's business section, which Ben Carter forwarded to me with a single, simple subject line, "Checkmate." Cade wasn't just facing city charges for the DOH violations. The moment Cole Mercer put his hands on me in front of a DA, the game changed. Jordan Price, armed with my testimony, Mark's audio recording, and the Rinaldi cold storage logs had kicked the case upstairs. Elliot Cade was now the subject of a federal investigation, obstruction of a city health inspection, criminal tampering with a commercial food supply, and the big ones, multiple counts of extortion and coercion. His assets, his entire fintech empire, were frozen. The man who had tried to erase my career and my custody was, himself, being systematically deleted by the very system he thought he was above. Cole Mercer was a footnote. He'd pled guilty to assault and obstruction of official business. He was a thug who had lost his patron, and the legal system devoured him without a second thought. My own old ghost, Mark, was also a casualty of Cade's war, though a much quieter one. The court-mandated therapy had begun. About 2 weeks after the hearing, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was just, "I'm sorry, Ava." I let it sit for a full day before I opened it. It was exactly what I expected. A long, rambling, pathetic explanation. He hadn't known what Cade was capable of. He'd been used. Cade had promised him money, a way out of his debts, a way to get his family back. It was full of excuses, each one weaker than the last. It ended with, "I know I messed up. I'm starting the program. I just want to see Emma again someday." I stared at the words. The hot, burning rage I used to feel when I thought of him was gone. There was no fury left. There was just a vast gray exhaustion, a deep, profound pity for a man so weak he would bargain with his own child's life. I took a deep breath. I let the pity wash over me, and then I let it go. I replied. I kept it short. I kept it clean. I kept it on my side of the street. Mark, I acknowledge your apology. I hope the therapy is productive. All future communication regarding Emma must go through the court-appointed coordinator. I wish you well. I hit send. I deleted the thread. I closed another door. Life began to find a new, steadier rhythm. The summer, which had started with a thunderstorm and a threat, settled into a warm, predictable humidity. Dominic's white paper wasn't just a press release. He meant every word. In mid-July, he announced the Liam Rinaldi Scholarship Fund. It was a massive endowment funded by the Rinaldi Group, designed to provide full-ride scholarships and community support. The priority, he stated, was for the children of two specific groups: healthcare professionals in the New York City system and the families of restaurant and logistics workers. My world and his, linked by the memory of his brother. He called me the night before the announcement. "There's a reception," he said, his voice hesitant, "at the Mulberry Street location. It's not a party, just for the staff and the hospital partners. I would like it if you and Emma came." "I don't know, Dominic," I said, "it feels public, like I'm on display." There was a long pause. "It's not for them, Ava," he said quietly. "It's for him, for Liam. I want good people in the room. You're the best person I know." So I went. I didn't wear a cocktail dress. I wore my clean, pressed nurse's scrubs from my day shift at St. Jude's with a light cardigan over them. Emma wore her favorite yellow sundress. We didn't walk in the front. We came in through the kitchen, where Dominic met us. He looked at my scrubs and smiled, a real, unguarded smile that lit up his eyes. We didn't sit at the front table. We stood in the back, near the bar, beside a group of line cooks in their starched whites and a few other nurses from my own hospital. We were just part of the community. Dominic's speech was 5 minutes long. He didn't talk about profit margins or transparency. Not really. He just told the story of his brother. "My brother, Liam, loved this city," he said, his voice thick. "He believed in it. This fund, it's to honor that belief. It's to invest in the people who are this city, the ones who heal us, and the ones who feed us. My family's new promise is simple. We protect our own, and we protect the civilians who make our lives possible. That's the Liam rule." His eyes found mine across the crowded, warm room. He raised his glass to me. I raised my water glass back, a silent, shared promise. The world was reseating itself. The old players were finding new roles. Ben Carter resigned from the Rinaldi Group. It was amicable, respectful, and he was too sharp to be one-man security chief. He opened his own consulting firm, Carter Compliance and Risk. He specialized in teaching old-world, family-run companies how to navigate the 21st century, how to go white without getting burned. His first client on a massive retainer was the Rinaldi Group. And then there was Tasha. "You're kidding me," she said, bursting into my apartment, waving a letter. The fund, they offered me a job." I smiled. "Doing what?" "Community coordinator for the Liam Fund. They want to pay me, a real salary, to organize the neighborhood programs, the tutoring, the after-school art classes, Ava. They're paying me to be me." My best friend, my civilian anchor, she was now, officially, the bridge. She was the one who would ensure Dominic's money and my community, his world and hers, met in the right way. The ordinary people, the ones Cade had dismissed, were now running the show. My own life shifted. The biggest change was the quiet, the lack of fear. I didn't quit my job. I loved being a nurse. It was who I was. But I changed my relationship with it. I used my seniority, my exemplary, unblemished record, and I swapped my schedule. No more doubles, no more overnights, unless it was a dire emergency. I was home for dinner. I was home to read Goodnight Moon. Tasha's first official act as coordinator was to launch the Liam's Palette free art class. Held in the community church basement, Emma was the first to sign up. I went to pick her up that first Tuesday. I walked in, and she was covered. Her hands, her face, her dress, all streaks of purple and blue paint. She was laughing, holding up a piece of paper. On it was a wild, swirling painting of a tall building in the clouds. "It's the castle in the sky! Mommy!" she yelled. The safe house. She had turned a place of fear into a piece of art. This was it. This was the peace I had fought for. This was what safe looked like. Dominic and I, we were quiet. The kiss in the alley was a live wire we hadn't touched again. He was busy dismantling his father's legacy and building his own. I was busy rebuilding my life. He didn't crowd me. He didn't push. He gave me the one thing I needed more than anything: space. He'd call, "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." "Is Emma okay?" "She's great." "Good, I'll call you tomorrow." That was enough. Until one night, late in August, the rain was back, but it was a soft summer shower, tapping gently on the windows, a cleansing sound. Emma was asleep. I was reading, my feet tucked under me on the sofa. My buzzer rang. It was him. I let him up. He looked tired. He'd shed his suit jacket. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, revealing the faded ink on his wrist. He wasn't carrying flowers. He wasn't carrying wine. He was holding a small, old-looking wooden box. "I found this," he said, his voice rough, "when I was cleaning out my father's old study." He opened it. Inside, on a faded velvet lining, was an ink stamp, a wooden handle, a round rubber base. It was the symbol, the keep them safe symbol. "This was the original," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Liam and I, we made it with a wood-burning kit when I was 12. We used to stamp our school books, our baseball gloves, thought we were knights." He looked at me, his eyes full of a history I was only just beginning to understand. I don't know what to do with it. I looked at the stamp, then I looked at the cedar box on my mantel. It was my memory box. It held a locket from my mother, Emma's first hospital bracelet, a lock of her baby hair. I said nothing. I just walked over, took the small wooden box from his hands, and retrieved the stamp. I opened my cedar box. I placed the stamp inside, right next to Emma's bracelet. His past, his promise, his brother, they were safe. They were with my families. He watched me, his throat working. He just nodded once. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time. The apartment was quiet, smelling faintly of the rain and his cologne. I pulled out a piece of my good stationery. My mother was gone, but I needed to tell her. "Dear Mom, I know you always worried I'd end up with a man who was all noise and thunder, like Dad, or one who was weak, like Mark. For a long time, I thought I'd just end up with no one, that it was safer. I've met someone. He's complicated. He has thunder in him. But I'm not afraid of it. You always told me to find a man who wouldn't stand in front of me or behind me. You told me to find the one who would stand beside me. I think I found him. Mom, I found a man who stands beside me, not above me." I folded the letter. I walked over to the cedar box. I slipped it inside, right next to the stamp. The city healed. The summer began to fade. One Saturday, I was walking with Emma, on our way to the park. Our path took us past the Larchmont, the hotel. A new wedding was happening. White ribbons were tied to the railings. A new bride, beautiful and nervous, was getting out of a limousine. Her family was laughing, hugging. The sounds of a string quartet drifted from the open doors. Life goes on. The city, in its infinite, relentless way, recycles itself. The settings stay the same. But I was different. I wasn't the woman in the ill-fitting, 2-year-old dress. I wasn't the ghost at table 24. I wasn't the woman drowning in shame. I held my daughter's hand. She was chattering about the art class, about Tasha, about the color purple. I smiled at the doorman, a man who had no idea who I was or what had happened in his ballroom just a few months before. He smiled back. I squeezed Emma's hand, and we walked past into the bright, clear, afternoon sun. I left the ghost of my former self behind, and I didn't look back. The storm was over. Autumn had arrived, painting the city in shades of rust and gold, washing away the memory of the violent summer thunderstorm that had changed my life. We weren't in a safe house. We weren't in a courtroom. We were at Rinaldi's on Mulberry Street, and it was loud. This wasn't the hushed, intimidating, fine dining establishment I had imagined. Tonight, it was a community center. The community table. The first official event for the Liam Rinaldi Fund was in full swing. Dominic had thrown open the doors. He'd shut down reservations for the entire night. The tables were filled with hospital staff from my unit, nurses and doctors and orderlies, their children running between the tables. Line cooks, truck drivers, and dishwashers from the Rinaldi group were there with their families, clinking glasses with pediatric patients from St. Jude's who were on a day pass. It was chaotic. It was noisy. It smelled like oregano, garlic, and slow-cooked tomato sauce. It was the absolute perfect opposite of the Larchmont. Tasha, in her element, was running the check-in table near the door, handing out gift bags and coloring books to the kids. She was glowing, a clipboard in one hand, a cannoli in the other, directing families with the efficiency of a seasoned kindergarten teacher. I saw Ben Carter by the bar. He wasn't working. He was in a crisp suit, laughing, his head tilted back. He was talking to Assistant District Attorney Jordan Price. They weren't discussing evidence or threats. They were arguing over the Yankees off-season. And Dominic was everywhere. He wasn't the CEO. He wasn't the conciliator. He was a host. I watched him clear plates from a table of nurses. I watched him kneel to talk to a little boy in a wheelchair, the boy's parents watching with tears in their eyes. He was wearing a suit, but his sleeves were rolled up, and he had a clean white dish towel tucked into his belt. He looked tired, and I had never seen him look happier. Emma was in heaven. She was at a long table with the other kids, Tasha's Liam's Palette program in full effect. They were decorating cookies, their faces smeared with red and green frosting. I was standing near the kitchen, just watching this world I had accidentally helped build, a world where a hospital and a restaurant empire were just family. A slow, old ballad started to play over the speakers, something Italian, full of acoustic guitars and a soaring tenor. Dominic looked up from across the room, as if he'd felt me watching. He said something to the line cook he was talking to, wiped his hands on the towel, and started walking toward me. He didn't stop until he was standing right in front of me, blocking my view of the room. "You're not at the pity table, see?" he said, his voice a low, soft rumble under the noise. "No," I smiled. "I'm not." "You're not drinking champagne. Just water." "You're not alone." "No," I said, my voice catching. "I'm not." He held out his hand, the same hand that had landed on my back at the wedding, the same hand I had grabbed in the warehouse. "Dance with me, my wife." My breath hitched. The words hit me like a physical blow, a perfect echo of that first night, the fear, the pressure, the transaction. I felt a ghost of that panic. He saw it in my eyes. He saw the hesitation. His expression softened, the command in his eyes disappearing, replaced by that same raw vulnerability I'd seen in the service corridor when I'd said his brother's name. He leaned in, his voice for me alone. "If you want that, the choice. The one thing no one had given me, the one thing he hadn't given me at the Larchmont, but was giving me now." I looked at this complicated, dangerous, decent man, the man who had faced down his past, the man who had made pancakes for my daughter. I placed my hand in his. "Wait." We both turned. Emma was running toward us, her face a sticky, smiling mess of green frosting. She was holding her hands out, her palms clutched tight. "You forgot these. Silly," she laughed. She opened her hands. Lying in her frosting-covered palm were 2 rings. They weren't diamond. They weren't gold. They were simple, brushed silver bands, like the kind you'd get in a craft market. Dominic looked at me, his eyes wide with a confusion I knew was real. He hadn't planned this. I knew who had. I looked over at the bar. Tasha was watching us, a massive, knowing smile on her face. She raised her glass of iced tea to me. I picked up one of the rings. It was light and warm from my daughter's hand. It was engraved on the inside. Emma and Liam. Not our names, theirs, the children, the foundation, the reason. My eyes filled with tears. I looked at Dominic, and I saw the understanding dawn on his face. He saw it, too. This wasn't a union to bind us. It was a union to honor them. I didn't say yes. I didn't have to. I just nodded, my eyes never leaving his. He took the other ring from Emma's hand. His own hands, the hands of a businessman and the grandson of an immigrant, were shaking. He slid the silver band onto my left hand. It fit perfectly. I took his hand. I saw the faded ink on his wrist, the symbol of the promise he'd made to his brother. Keep them safe. I slid the matching ring onto his finger, right next to the ink. Okay, Emma giggled. Now you can kiss. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. 300 people, nurses, cooks, drivers, lawyers were watching us. Dominic smiled. He put his hands on my waist, pulling me close, and he kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, frantic, rain-soaked kiss from the Red Hook Alley. This one was warm. It was steady. It tasted like garlic bread and hope. I could hear the clatter of forks, the laughter of the children, and the low, steady thrum of the restaurant. It was a kiss that smelled like tomato sauce. It was the kiss of a real, messy, complicated life. It was a kiss that smelled like home. This was our family, the one we had chosen. I looked over his shoulder, through the big plate glass window. A light rain was falling, the kind that makes the pavement shine. There was no thunder. There was no lightning. The storm was finally, truly over. Fairy tales, I thought, aren't clean. They're not sterile. They're messy. And they're written in the margins of court documents and in the steam of a restaurant kitchen. The real world is full of ghosts and compromises. But we can choose to be better. We can choose to be cleaner, every single day. A staffer from the fund, a young woman with a camera, was taking pictures for the community newsletter. She snapped one, and then, "Group hug!" Emma shouted, launching herself at us. She threw her small, sticky arms around both our waists, squeezing us together. Her face, full of pure, uncomplicated joy, was pressed against my side. Her other arm wrapped around Dominic's leg, a perfect, unbroken circle. A month later, I went to Mulberry Street to meet Dominic for lunch. I was early. I stood in the lobby, waiting for him. It was there, on the wall. The photograph. It was huge, framed in simple black wood. The moment Emma had hugged us, the three of us, caught in that circle of light and laughter. I went closer. There was a small brass plaque on the frame. It didn't say, Mr. Dominic Rinaldi and family. It didn't list any donor names. It didn't say anything about the fund. It just had one word, engraved in the brass. Home. I felt his hand on my back. I looked up. He was smiling. I looked down at his hand, resting on my shoulder, the simple silver band resting right next to the faded ink. The old promise and the new one, they were a single vow now. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to chat and share our thoughts. Please, if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really loved it, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. Your support means the world.